Welcome back to Second Breakfast and our ongoing fandom discussions, bringing you the best thoughts, theories, and literary analysis this side of the 2010s.
In this episode, we're talking about franchises. Specifically, how do you end a franchise? We've had 3 big franchises end in the recent, few months. And we want to talk about how they ended and what that means and did they do a good job and what makes a good ending. So we're going to break it down by talking about 3 different franchises. We're going to talk about Sex and the City, The Conjuring, and Downton Abbey. A nice healthy mix. Let's get into it.
All right, so this is a medley, and as I previewed there in the intro, the 2010s are finally over. And that's fairly traumatic for both of us.
Yes, it's taken a long time to end, and the 2010s were our entire adolescence and early 20s. So I wish that ended a lot sooner than it did.
And I feel like that's kind of the period of time where we came online with our own media tastes,
right.
Looking at things critically or obsessively. I looked it up, and Downton Abbey, not that, we can go in whatever order we want, but Downton Abbey started in 2010.
Oh, incredible.
Obviously, the Sex and the City universe was before that, way before that.
Yeah, but I didn't really come upon Sex and the City until the 2010s, right?
So, yeah. And The Conjuring, of course, was early 2010. So It's an interesting time, and it's made me feel sort of melancholy and morose.
Yes, a little
There's
bit.
been an emotional quality to all of these things. And, if it's not your first time here, you will have seen that we did an episode on The Conjuring Last Rites a couple weeks ago at this point when the film came out. So if you want our traditional deep dives, you can go over there and listen to that one.
Absolutely.
But this is more of a zoomed out kind of podcasty discussion. If you're a patron over on our Patreon, $2 a month, you can support the show. You'll be used to this sort of episode. We really like doing those. We have a breakfast buffet roundup series over there where we talk about a bunch of different works of art in conversation with each other. And this seemed like an opportunity to do that kind of thing again. Which of these 3 would you like to start with?
I think let's start with Sex and the City. Just because it's so much fun. And we can get sadder and sadder as the episode goes on. Does that sound good to you?
Yes. Okay. So for each of these 3 things, we're going to give you some context just in case you're not familiar with one of the franchises we're discussing, and then we'll recap what they did for their ending. So I guess spoilers abound for these 3 millennial franchises.
How can you not if you're talking about endings? So here we go. But okay.
So And Just Like That is the new series. It's kind of the renamed revival of Sex and the City, which ran on HBO for 6 seasons and then had 2 movies and then came back many years after that. The second movie was so bad.
Oh, God.
It came back many years later with these 3 seasons of the Rocky renamed partial revival And Just Like That.
Yeah.
And you kind of have to set the table for where the fandom was and how this revival was received, because it's a very different environment than the other 2 franchises we're going to talk about. The key word that I kept coming back to when I was putting together notes here was attrition.
Okay.
The audience was pretty aggressively alienated over the course of these 3 seasons. If you look at the viewership, it's not a pretty picture.
No, it drops.
And I think that starts from the very beginning of this project. You have 6 seasons and 2 movies. And within that oeuvre, I don't know, I was tempted to go French there.
Oeuvre, you mean?
Thank you. I figured if I did enough of a bad accent, it would kind of cover the letters.
No, it just made it worse.
Thank you. I'm glad you're here to correct me and scoff. You basically had the same cast for those 6 seasons and 2 movies.
Yeah.
And the thing about And Just Like That, when it came back for a revival, is how many massive absences it had from the main cast. There were some actors who didn't want to come back. There were some who were killed off immediately in the first episode. And there were some who were characterized so wildly differently that it felt like a different show.
Different characters, yeah.
But a different show that was betraying the sense of investment and emotion that you have in these characters over the course of decades. I want to stop there so you can jump in.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest sin of And Just Like That. I mean, to back up, Sex and the City is such a fun show. I mean, if you've never watched it, I cannot recommend enough that you do. It starts out, the entire way through, the thing is cheesy and badly written, and the characters are messy, and it is just... It's a ridiculous show, but it is so good. And it has moments of genuinely good drama and emotion and relationships.
And humor.
And humor. And the show really kind of works its identity out within seasons 2 and 3, and then I think is really strong for the rest of it. It's not like other comedies or dramas that we enjoy, but like it just has a different flavor, but it's a really, really fun show and very much a like time capsule of New York City in the 90s and 2000s. Like no one barely has a cell phone, smartphones don't exist, social media doesn't exist. It's so fun. And so when And Just Like That came out, we were hesitant but curious because it was like, oh, it's a return. But I think its biggest sin, apart from, I mean, there are so many of them, but I think its biggest sin is its betrayal. There's a feeling of betrayal of the original show in that I feel that the characters feel betrayed. The like concept feels betrayed. I don't feel like I recognize anything on the show. I feel like everything is different. And I understand in a reboot, when you're making a new show that's 20 years later, of course there are going to be changes, and of course people change over the course of 20 years. Carrie Bradshaw in her 50s is not going to be Carrie Bradshaw in her 30s. Like, I get that. But these characters have so fundamentally changed, and it's almost as if the original show doesn't exist. And that's what really gets me. It's basically just like it felt like the writers had, okay, these are our 3 archetypes, because Samantha's not there, so we don't have a 4th. These are our 3 archetypes of people, and let's write a story around them without any reference to the journeys and arcs that these characters have gone on in the original show. Let's completely betray and kill off or ruin the lives of side characters, meaning Big, Steve, Samantha.
Let's go through some specifics just to kind of root this in a distinct conversation.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the cast. We'll do changes later, but starting with just absences. This is a show with 4 leads, and you're coming back with the revival without one of those 4, Samantha, Kim Cattrall, who's absolutely the fan favorite.
Yes, and of course that's not the show's fault. It's Kim Cattrall didn't want to do the show.
Well, it's the choice to go ahead without, it's a chair with 4 legs.
Well, yes, they shouldn't have done the show without her. I'm saying it's not their fault she didn't want to do it, but they should not have done the show. Like, period. Yeah. I think that's where it should have ended. Like, oh, well, we can't have our leads for the show, then let's not do it. Because she is so essential to the show. Right.
And there are a whole mess of new characters. Mm-hmm. And we had an interesting experience because we kind of binged through seasons 2 and 3 around the time of my birthday. It just has a little gift to myself.
Because we watched season 1 when it came out, and we absolutely hated it. And so we never came back. But then when it very unexpectedly ended, we thought, let's just bite the bullet and just, watch them all back to back to back. And we did that.
And watching it in that concentrated a form, I think you see the puppet strings a little more. Mm-hmm. You see how hard the show is trying to pivot and react to the audience and the audience's sense of betrayal and loathing and all the other things we've seen kind of erupt over this fandom. But I was so interested by the lack of vitriol I felt for the show. Because season 1 of And Just Like That, all you're doing is reacting to, this feels wrong, this feels different. And I think that's totally natural. And I don't know. I don't know how to vilify a fandom for that type of reaction. I think it's fine. I understand creatives wanting to do a new thing, but I also understand audiences being incredibly invested in characters over the course of decades. I think that's part and parcel. And going back to seasons 2 and 3, I was expecting to resent all of the new characters. The idea being, I'm here to see my old friends, right? I'm here to see Charlotte, Miranda, and Carrie, who I've known for so long. And anytime the camera's on anyone new, it just feels like a waste of time. And I didn't feel that way. There are a lot of the new characters, especially through into season 3, that I liked those other characters. There was less baggage because I didn't have those expectations going in. I didn't feel a sense of betrayal because I was just meeting them.
You expected them to be there by that point,
And it was more that the whole show wasn't very good, but the problem wasn't the new characters. To the point that when they culled half of the new characters in between seasons 2 and 3, I actually missed some of the new ones. In season 3.
I was surprised that we were both missing Che Diaz.
Totally.
Who is really annoying in season 1 and is kind of a mix in season 2. But by the end, they're putting them, the writers put Che through an interesting arc. And once they stop dating Miranda, they become a much more palatable and interesting. But then by then they get rid of Che, and it's like, oh, that was kind of sad.
And I think it's fairly shitty what they did to Che as a character and to the actor playing them, which I believe Sarah Ramirez
That sounds
I'm
right.
pulling that off the dome, so I don't know. But
okay.
the problem with season 1 with Che and Miranda was I've known Miranda for 6 seasons and 2 movies as being, I mean, not all that time, but being in love with Steve, being married to Steve, having their kid together, Brady, and I'm invested in that relationship, in that story. So Miranda leaving Steve and living this new life with Che felt like such a betrayal. At once we feel sympathy for Steve and we feel like, oh, this feels like such a different Miranda. I don't know if I recognize this version of the character.
Right.
And I think the fandom basically just blamed that on Che, who wasn't, I mean, the most entertainingly written character in television in the first season. But I think all of those issues got lumped on the character of Che.
Exactly. Like we started to kind of like subconsciously blame Che for Miranda's betrayal.
Yes. And season 2, I think, did a really interesting job of untangling that dilemma, because by the end of season 2, when they unfortunately wrote out Che, I liked Che as a character.
I know, it's kind of a bummer. I
fully came to terms with the fact that the problem, I think at the core of this part of the show, is what they did with Miranda. I don't think Che was the problem. I think what they did with Miranda was the problem.
And I think Miranda is the worst of all of these betrayals and changes and sort of like turning their backs upon the original show, because as the show went on, like from seasons 1, 2, and 3, Miranda was just not Miranda. It was an entirely different person. I did not recognize this character. This character was like, you know, original Sex and the City Miranda is cynical and kind of mean, but honest and vulnerable, and, you know, is dealing with this simultaneous, like, I want to be this independent corporate, like, lawyer, New York woman, like, modern woman, but I also really want love and affection. And, like, Steve was so perfect for her because he loves and adores her, but also challenges her and, like, respects her. And, like, they have a really, really great dynamic. And Miranda is, like, the one friend who will, like, call Carrie out for her shit, or will, you know, be sympathetic in an unexpected moment. And this Miranda was just stupid, simpering, and a mean idiot. Like,
she was callous.
She wasn't mean in the original Miranda way. She was mean in a, like, just absolutely zero feelings or care for anybody else in the world. Mean. And
particularly her intimate friends and family.
Yes. And her, like, demanding validation for her new identity. And I'm really intrigued by the idea of a woman in her 50s re-exploring her sexuality. I think that's a really interesting idea, and I didn't dislike that element of Miranda.
Of course not.
But what I disliked was how that just became her, like, excuse for her total betrayal of her family and just being a generally awful person. I didn't understand that at all.
And we always try to draw a line in the sand where we don't guess at artist intent. Mm-hmm. We don't like to do that, and I don't want to do that. That's why I'm qualifying what I'm about to say. But I think there comes a point when you have actors in a franchise that is this long running and this popular, the actors get an amount of say within that franchise to the point where they can steer things like plot lines for their character.
Yes, and we know that all 3 main actresses had executive producing credits on this show and had quite a lot of power.
And if you look at who Cynthia Nixon is, just as a person, she takes a massive interest in politics and being an activist. And of course, she's a lesbian and always has been. And I think it's interesting that the Miranda in Sex and the City is none of those things.
Right.
And then the Miranda at the end of the 3rd season of And Just Like That is all of those things. That's where I start to get the Spidey sense about, are we just making our characters a mascot for ourselves? Because we've done, I don't know, their half-hour episodes, dozens of hours of storytelling with this character this one way. And to 20 years later, kind of seem to Frankenstein that into not being Miranda, but being Cynthia Nixon. It felt weird. And I think it did very strange things to a lot of the storytelling. Because the original show is so tightly crafted.
Right.
It's you said it was kind of silly and goofy and cheesy. And I think that is a difficult thing to pull off in a way that is endearing and charming instead of grating and annoying.
Right.
Again, comedy's the hardest thing to make. I've written and made pretty much everything at this point, comedy is by far the most difficult.
Right.
So the original show is a masterpiece. It's great. It's the best couple show ever made.
So fun to watch, yeah.
But all of these archetypes that you referred to earlier, they're really neatly calibrated to balance and offset each other. And their significant others form kind of additional secondary counterweights to make sure that the show is still a nicely, neatly, well-oiled, balanced machine. So having Carrie as the counterpoint with Miranda, and then having Steve as the counterpoint to Miranda, all of these things work in harmony.
Yes.
But the way they break and reforge Miranda in Just Like That has the double whammy of breaking her relationship with Carrie to the point where the same thing with Charlotte. Carrie's basically not friends with these people.
Yeah, we hardly ever see our main three interact. Or if they are, they're with the other side characters, and it's really not about their central dynamic. It feels like I'm watching an ensemble show where hardly anybody is ever together. It's very weird.
Yeah, to the point where you have to introduce characters like Lisa Todd Wexley to become to Charlotte what Carrie used to be.
Exactly,
So not only does it break the Miranda-Carrie relationship and understanding between these characters, it also breaks Steve and Miranda, which can only worsen our opinion of Miranda. Let's talk about Steve.
I know, Steve. I mean, well, because this is the thing about the original show, is that even though the dialogue is cheesy and like are arguably like not well written, the dialogue, the storytelling writing, the like construction, like the structure of the episodes and the season arcs and the multi-seasonal arcs, that is written really well in the original show. And Just Like That, not only is the dialogue bad, like the moment to moment writing, but the storytelling is so bad, because like if we go back to like Miranda exploring her sexuality, for example, season 1 of Sex and the City has an episode where Miranda tries to be a lesbian. She like has this funny awkward thing happen at work, and she basically ends up fake dating a girl to like impress her boss, and she even like tries kissing the woman. And there's even an episode where Charlotte pretends to be a lesbian for a while. They explore that idea constantly, and at no point in a Just Like That do they mention those moments. Like that would be a really key like callback. Like shows love a chance to do a member berries, right? You think they would have brought that back, but they don't address it at all. Similarly, in season 1, when Miranda is randomly an alcoholic, even though she's never had an issue her whole life, now all of a sudden she does. Okay, whatever. I'm not an addiction expert, so I don't know. But it seems very contrived. She doesn't once talk to her husband who owns a bar. She doesn't talk about that at all. She just deals with it on her own and just forgets Steve. Like, there's so much about Miranda, and especially her relationship with Steve, that just doesn't make sense.
I want to kind
go
of
ahead.
season that point a little bit. I saw a really interesting thread on Twitter. I forget who it was. I think it was Brendan Hodges, who has really interesting thoughts about film and TV that I forward to you a lot. And he was talking, we're recording this right after the Emmys, and he was talking about the difference between The Pit and Severance, and why he thought it made sense that The Pit won. And he was talking about that show having such a rigorous grasp of storytelling fundamentals and story structure and character development, where he didn't think season 2 of Severance had that. And he was saying there's almost a more molecular explanation for why this thing resonated with people. And I think that's a lot of the difference between And Just Like That and Sex and the City. Because when characters make dumb decisions in Sex and the City, it feels like flawed people making dumb decisions. But it never feels like the story's being told poorly.
Right.
And then Just Like That, the characters rarely feel real or consistent in that same way. And they're constantly making wild, out-of-pocket decisions that just don't make sense and feel like a wrong note that your ear picks up on at a concert.
Yes, and if I'm remembering correctly, part of what happens in season 1 is, it's been a few years, so I'm a little shady, but Miranda basically, we get the sense that she's not satisfied by her sexual relationship with Steve. They're getting old, they've gotten into tired, bored habits, and that makes sense for an aging couple, but we really get the sense that Steve doesn't try with Miranda. And I'm sorry, but that is not the Steve we know. Steve we know would never stop trying to please Miranda and make her happy. And he is he puts in so much effort with her throughout the entirety of the original show. Not only just when he's trying to first start dating her, but the whole way through, even in the like interlude where he cheats on her, which is like the saddest thing. But like his whole thing is he puts in effort for Miranda and he wants to make her happy. And if he messes up, he like is willing to admit it and try again. And I know that as you age, you take things for granted, but like, I just don't believe that Steve would just stop. I don't believe that after 20 years together, Steve would not know how to satisfy Miranda. Like, that's insane.
I think this is an interesting Rubicon that happens a lot in long-running TV shows. There was that mild flirtation in Downton Abbey, which I know we're going to talk about in a minute, that you just reminded me of, where Lord Grantham kind of considers cheating on Cora with one of the housemates.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Yeah.
And it felt so viscerally wrong.
Yes.
There was a moment towards the end of The Office where the writers pitched Jim having an affair, and John Krasinski had like flipped a table.
He said Jim would never do that, obviously.
But also the idea of the fans would never accept that.
Yes, right.
There are these, and I'm not saying you can't do wild and unexpected things with characters.
Of course.
But there are these unspoken rules that develop over the course of years and years that you're with a character. And the way that the format of this show changed between Sex and the City and Just Like That, just as the storytelling fundamentals were falling apart, the show leaned harder and harder into ongoing character-based storytelling. Because the original 6 seasons are basically episodic, or maybe procedural is the word.
Yeah.
Where they all, I mean, broadly speaking, they basically each have a new boyfriend for each episode.
Yeah, there's a self-contained arc of a new guy that they're dating and something funny and hijinks happen.
And there's a theme.
Right.
Connecting those threads. And then we kind of rinse and repeat and start over again in the next episode.
And of course there are boyfriends that last multiple episodes and seasons, and there's some other like overarching, plots that happen, but it's like that in all procedurals, So
yes, there are a couple threads but that continue.
But it's truly episodic for television.
And Just Like That is not like that at all.
No.
It's very much long sweeping stories that are not really resolved. They just kind of end or fade out.
Right. And no episode feels like its own complete story.
Yeah.
It just feels like pieces of a larger story.
For being so meditative and slower paced, it's not like the character work is more rigorous. I don't feel like the characters are more fully explored than they were in those bite-sized 22-minute chunks in the original series.
Right, because also the new series is the episodes are 45 minutes long. They're
yes.
way
Let's talk about
too
that.
long.
That's a massive change in format for any type of storytelling.
There's just no need for any of these to be 45 minutes. Every episode felt too long. Every plot felt too drawn out. It was just because there were too many characters. That's the other thing, is you have your main 3, and you also have Lisa, and you also have the professor whose name I'm forgetting, and then for a while you have Che, and then there's also Seema, and then I feel like there's somebody else. There's Anthony, right, who becomes kind of a main. I do actually really love Anthony's arc, but
Stanford's
whatever.
in the first season.
Yeah, right. But of course, then the actor died, and so he couldn't be in there anymore. But so there are kind of too many characters that we're following solo. Not like, because in the original show, we follow Stanford and Anthony as they relate to our main characters. We follow Aiden and Big and Harry and Steve, but again, as they connect to our main 4. And so it's contained and it's tight and it's all interwoven. This is just like branching out and floating around, and there's just kind of no rhyme or reason to any
And there's
of it.
still no theme.
No
so
theme,
it's just kind
exactly.
of, it's way too much time of a kind of a disorganized, it's just 45 minutes more of this shapeless thing.
Yes.
It's an
really
incredibly
messy.
strange viewing experience, because we started rewatching Sex and the City. We blew through the first 2 seasons, I think.
Yeah, we're on season 3 now.
And then in between that, we went back to And Just Like That, and it was jarring.
It's a brutal contrast. Yeah.
We talked about the form changing, the structure changing, the massive absences in the cast, the changed style, the perceived betrayals of main characters. The last thing to hit here, I think, is, and this one's kind of slippery, it's about how the comedic sensibility changed between the original show and the revival.
Yeah, there's no single moment of this new show that's funny. I think maybe I laughed once.
Is it the first season that starts right after COVID? I believe that's the subtext.
That was such a tough choice. Is they chose to...
I mean, it's a show set in New York, so it's unavoidable.
Is it though?
I guess. Maybe.
You could have just pretended. You could have just pretended it didn't happen.
I'm totally wrong.
And I know that in that time period, TV and movies were definitely grappling with, do we ignore this thing or do we include it as part of our plot? But the thing is, original show totally ignores 9/11. So I think And Just Like That should ignore COVID.
That's an interesting corollary.
Because 9/11 happens in the middle of the show.
But that's not my problem. Because I think if you do make the choice, in the same way you make the choice to continue without Kim Cattrall, you're already making the wrong decision.
Yeah.
If you make the choice to acknowledge COVID within this New York set show, the characters need to react to COVID in the way that the characters would as we knew them from the 90s. In the same way, Carrie, it was always kind of a joke. In the same way, every single sitcom that's ever happened, it's always characters in New York and they always have an apartment that's too big. And everyone says, oh, she could never afford that apartment, writing a little column.
Right.
I get that. And I don't care. Because I like to look at her apartment.
Of course, it's a beautiful apartment.
And I don't care. I mean, it's the fantasy of being a successful, making a living as a writer. That's enough of a fantasy
She
anyway.
writes one column a week and she can live by herself. That's incredible.
But that's fine. But when you're in your, I don't know, what age are the women during season 1? 50s?
50s, yeah.
Okay. When you're in your 50s and you portray all three of these women as not just well off in New York, which is a sliding scale of its own.
Sure.
But 1% are rich.
Absurdly wealthy.
Obscene wealth.
They are
out of touch.
It is disgusting how wealthy these women are.
And like that in itself, again, is not a problem. But there are second order effects of that decision. How are you going to play that obscene wealth and privilege for comedy? And you can do that because on the same network we have Succession.
Right.
So
or The White Lotus.
Exactly. There's a cottage industry of making fun of this exact thing. And it's almost never, it's glossed over as almost it would be rude to discuss.
Especially, and it's so strange too, because the show isn't afraid to like talk about social justice issues.
The whole point of the show is to talk about race and class and gender. Usually in the context of relationships, where all of those things are relevant and perennial.
Yes.
And for them to just completely gloss over money,
right,
and class,
because they talk about gender and sexuality and race like frequently throughout the show, and it's interesting. They never once talk about class. They just pretend that doesn't exist,
right?
And it's really icky. If
we've learned anything over the last, 10, 15 years of American life, it's that class is the one that matters.
Right. And in the original show, the characters are all still pretty well off. Like Carrie, like jokingly, like, oh, she like has no money, but it's because she keeps buying $400 shoes. If you're actually poor, you're not buying $400 shoes. So there's an element of like, they're all a little bit rich, but it's still talked about. And like, there's this interest in like, Charlotte is only looking for like an Ivy League educated guy. And like,
and they make fun of her for that.
Right. And then like Steve and Miranda have a whole thing where Steve's a bartender and doesn't make money versus Miranda who does. And then compare that
they do the issues of pride when she tries to buy him that suit early on.
Exactly.
And he can't afford the suit, but he also doesn't want her to buy it for him. There's a whole world of how class and money affect all of these other issues. You can't ignore that central issue if you want to explore the rest of life with these people.
And then flash forward to season 3 where Miranda dates the voice actress.
Yes.
And she goes over to her apartment and the whole thing is played like this woman is this absolute disaster and mess, and it's genuinely just she's poor. Like the whole joke is that this woman has a small apartment and lives alone with her cats. But her apartment isn't like gross. The woman's not being an asshole. She's being very nice. She's inviting Miranda inside, and Miranda's just horrified because this woman is poor. And it's like, and then she just leaves without telling her. And it's actually the saddest, weirdest, most out of touch thing I've ever seen.
It's incredibly fucked up because it isn't played for comedy. You could have, how many seasons of Seinfeld did we all watch? You can play characters doing shitty things that are classist or racist or homophobic or anything else. People doing shitty things can be, it's always fodder for comedy.
Because the funny part is that the person is being shitty, but here what we're supposed to laugh at is that this woman is poor.
Right.
And that was actually so awful.
Yes.
That made me really, really mad.
And there was no pushback.
Nope.
That didn't become the topic of conversation at the next diner scene.
Right.
It was just accepted as fact and we moved forward.
And then she like told her friends about it. They're like, oh, that sounds horrible. They weren't like, Miranda, maybe that was kind of shitty of you. Like nobody called her out.
No, and this issue is at the center of the original show because part of the majority of the fantasy of Mr. Big is him having the private driver and the limo. It's money. It's that being this literally blank check to the life in New York that these women all want, that everyone in New York wants.
Of course, yeah.
That everyone anywhere wants to some degree.
Sure.
Completely losing that in the revival. I can't get over it because I think that one issue ruins everyone's storylines.
Yeah, it really does.
Because it becomes this thing that's just not spoken of. But you see it all the time. The amount, I mean, we watched some interesting videos in the car the other day, listening to the behind the scenes stories of the show. The amount of fucking money this show took to make
It's such an expensive
was on like a Game of Thrones level.
It's like millions of dollars, millions and millions of dollars.
Yeah.
Like so much money to make this show.
It was unbelievable how much money it took to make this show and portray that type of lifestyle.
Yes, right.
So it's not like no one's thinking about it. It's weird for it to be present in every level of the production except the writing. Because I do think it undercuts a lot of these relationships. I want to move on before I start repeating myself here.
I can't talk about this too long or I'll get too upset.
It's overall, the comedic sensibility has changed.
Yes.
Because all of these, while we're avoiding the topic of class, which is downstream and upstream of everything else, none of these women are allowed to make an off-color joke. And when you watch the original show, the joy of these characters, because that's the only constant in this universe is the characters. The joy of it is how silly and loose and inappropriate and irreverent they can be with each other. Where someone will just float this half-baked idea in one of the diner scenes that's completely fucked up and wrong.
Right.
But they talk through it and they usually kind of learn a lesson by the end of the episode.
Right, the way that like real people would like figure out, oh, how are we supposed to talk about that issue?
The way you talk to your friends.
Exactly. And the way that women in their 50s certainly would talk, because it's hard to keep up with what's, that could have been the whole thing. That could have been what's so funny is, oh, everything's changing so fast. What's politically correct changes so often. Like, I don't know how I'm supposed to talk about this issue. I mean, they do that a little bit when we get into like Charlotte's kid, Rock, who comes out as gender binary or non-binary, excuse me. And they kind of talk about that, but it's not like in a, I'm trying to figure it out way. It's in a like, we have to only validate and respect this.
Exactly. Yes, didn't it strike you as incredibly off?
It just felt like someone was pointing a finger at me being like, you better respect the non-binary kid. I was like okay, my God.
Yeah, it didn't feel like these characters going through a situation. They started to feel like kind of shadow puppets.
Exactly.
And I think, that really struck me discordantly in the first season, because I had to ask how old these women were in the first season, because they're written to be about 200 years old.
Yeah, they make them really old in season 1. They're like, we're so old. It's like, okay.
So if you're taking that as your starting line, then they should be old and out of touch. And they should say things that are totally wild and wrong. But while they're written as being a million years old, they're also incredibly sensitive and respectful and read in on every current thing that they should be sensitive about.
Yes, but somehow Carrie doesn't know what a podcast is.
But it ends up, the whole thing feels so discordant and off. And on this level of, we've talked about this before, everything comes down to writing. It's a comedy. And the comedic sensibility is so wildly different and worse than the original show, or even the shitty movies.
Yes, yeah. The movies are bad in their own way, but I still felt like I was watching the characters. The whole show just feels like they had sketch ideas for like random things that might happen to women in their 50s, and then they just grafted them onto existing characters.
But that's the thing. When you know characters well enough, like the audience does at this point, you should be able to put a hat on a table. Everyone writes out little ideas. You throw them in the hat and you pick out a few of them, strap them together, look for a slightly cheesy theme, and write 22 minutes of fun television.
Yeah.
And at no point did the show do that. But it was interesting kind of binging through seasons 2 and 3, how the show shifted towards season 3, I thought was kind of telling. There were more moments, just brief moments, of the old magic as we got into season 3.
There were a couple things like Carrie would say something and go, oh, that's Carrie.
Exactly. Yes, moments that rang true in the same way the other moments just rang hollow.
We never got there with Miranda, but Carrie and even some moments with Charlotte, I was like, oh, those are our characters.
And that was the thing that was too bad, because I'm trying to segue into discussing the ending now that we've done the context. There's a lot of context to do.
There's a lot to lay out with this one.
For a franchise like this. But especially by the end of season 3, it kind of felt like a revival of Sex and the City. There were more moments that worked than didn't. And I think that's an important metric to cross.
Yes.
I guess 3 seasons in.
Yes.
But it was too late. It was too little too late. The fandom had already turned on it. The viewership was in the toilet. And the phenomenon of hate watching, I don't think has ever applied more in a more morbid sense to a long-running franchise than it did here.
I think every single viewer of seasons 2 and 3 of And Just Like That were hate watchers. I don't think anybody was watching this show because they genuinely liked it. I mean, us included, obviously, right? Like, I don't think anybody was like, yeah, I'm really liking this new show. It was, yeah, I'm hate watching this because it's fun.
So after season 3, or as season 3 is airing, sorry, I got the timeline mixed up. As season 3 is airing,
This shit was crazy.
they announced that it's going to be the final season.
Mm-hmm.
And they announced that there will be 2 additional episodes, which are kind of the rushed finale of the, I believe they called it in their naturalistic prose, the ongoing storytelling of the Sex and the City universe has now ended.
And this announcement was so crazy because it wasn't like they said it before season 3 dropped. It wasn't like they even said it after the first episode premiered. It was after episode, like, what, 8? Like, it was late.
It was right before. It was supposed to be 10 episodes, and then they added 2 more, so it was 12.
Uh-huh.
So right before it ended, they said, okay, this is it.
Yeah, it was wild.
And yeah, this is the weird thing. So,
and like the showrunners definitely didn't know. Like, that's what's really getting me, is like they were told this late in the game.
They were also saying that it was a creative decision.
But it obviously
and
wasn't.
If you watched one episode of that season, this is not where they wanted to end things.
No. They were trying to do a lot more.
So when we're talking about the ending, quote unquote, I guess, of this franchise.
The abrupt ending.
Sex and the City had a proper series finale. Then you have 2 follow-up films that each have their own farewells. I think, honestly, the first movie wraps up the whole thing.
Yeah, the first movie is quite fun.
You have Carrie and Big's wedding.
Yeah.
That's the set piece. That's great. The second movie is just they travel internationally.
They're like,
and it was brutal.
Girls trip, goofy. It's pretty bad.
And
it's
just like
it's like 2.5 hours.
It's interesting because the movies both felt like the original show if you squashed a whole season into a movie.
They both felt like whole seasons of TV. It was very funny.
But they also felt like the show.
Mm-hmm.
I value that more now that I've watched all of it just like that.
Yeah, they just felt like, slightly worse versions of the show, but they still felt like the show.
So if you're counting at home, that's already 1 proper ending with the series finale, and then 2 more proper endings with the movies.
Yes.
And then weirdly, season 2 of And Just Like That had very much a series finale as its season finale.
That's right, it did.
Where everyone is at Carrie's apartment and every storyline is wrapped up.
Because that's her, like, when she's like when she's moving out of her apartment, right? And she's moving into the giant ass house.
The location we've been in since the late 80s.
Right. And she invites everybody over for a farewell, and Aiden doesn't even come because he can't face going back in that apartment. That's kind of the whole thing. But so it's actually really great that he's not even there because he's not really a part of the show because Aiden and Carrie break up in the middle of the original show and Aiden's gone. Yeah.
So season 2 of the revival kind of gave it a 4th ending. Mm-hmm. And then weirdly, the whole thing kept going.
I know.
So you go into season 3, which cuts a whole swath of characters in a really... It just feels really shitty when you watch that transition. Mm-hmm. It doesn't feel like we resolved characters. We dotted and put the bows and now we're moving on. It just felt like we just cut half the story off.
It felt like when you transition from seasons 1 and 2 of The West Wing and Mandy is just gone and nobody addresses her.
Yeah, but these weren't all Mandys.
No,
I think that's a disservice.
That's the thing, is that nobody minded because Mandy is horrible, but this was not the case for these characters.
But you also build up a new normal. With these you're pivoting back to how the characters felt more so in the Sex and the City days. You're cutting a lot of the new characters. You're refocusing. You're trimming. You are doing the most distilled version of the thing you've done so far. But they were also very much setting up a season 4. Mm-hmm. They're just at the point of introducing a new romantic connection for Carrie towards the end of the 3rd season. And then it's canceled. Mm-hmm. And then you get those rushed additional 2 episodes for a series finale. So you have the 5th ending as the original ending of season 3, and then you have the 6th ending as the strapped-on series finale episodes. And the way that those last 2 episodes hit, do you want to talk about those for a second?
Can you I don't even remember what happens. What happens there? Like Aiden and Carrie
does the Saltburn walk around her apartment, or her new house at the end.
Yes.
After the boyfriend moves to London.
That's right. That was really strange.
So she's alone at the end.
Yeah. Which is like, so, I guess that's fine. It's fine for a woman to end up alone. Oh yeah, because the whole thing of season 3 is she's writing her novel about the woman in 18, whatever the fuck. And that was just really strange. No, I didn't like that. I think if the whole point of the original show, Sex and the City, is dating in New York and finding love, and then the original show ends with her finding love with Mr. Big,
Her soulmate, yes.
Her soulmate.
I'm Team Big.
Obviously, we're Team Big. He's messy, but so is she. They're great for each other. Aiden was always too good a guy. It's fine. Like, why would you then end this show with her? Like, why can't you just have her be with the guy? I thought that was strange.
And in the same way we talked about Miranda's character feeling sort of betrayed, they do some weird shit with Carrie when Aiden comes back in the picture.
Yeah.
And she never talks about Big again.
Nope,
after
she
he dies.
never mentions, like, season 1 is her grieving Big, and then after season 2, she just pretends he doesn't exist. There's, like, the one moment where it's, like, she has to do the memoir, so she's kind of sad about that, but then she never talks about him, and it's really sad.
But then she starts talking about her renewed relationship with Aiden, like they've been together for 25 years.
Yeah, I'm like, what about in the middle where you were married to somebody else?
Who loved you forever, who was the whole arc of the show.
Who gave you all this disgusting wealth.
Yeah. But it did kind of... It gave me some discord and kind of dissonance with that character.
Yeah, I didn't like
where
it.
Carrie stopped feeling like Carrie for a while. And the way that they write off Aiden again and that relationship crashes and burns again, it made a lot of her time in seasons 2 and 3 feel like a waste.
Yes, it really did. Yeah.
So, like, if you look at the arc of the main character in this 3-season revival, she ignored Big for a season and then failed with Aiden again for 2 seasons.
And then just kind of flirted with a British guy, and then he left too, so it's just her and her giant house.
But that part I liked. With Duncan,
Right, I liked him.
That felt like Carrie.
Yes. That was
Her ignoring Big is not what Carrie would do. Mm-mm. Her failing with Aiden, sure, I'll believe that.
Yeah,
the way they did it was poor.
Yes.
It's a tricky thing. Mm-hmm. So I don't think this 6th ending works.
No,
and it's
it really
not just
didn't
the cancellation, because even if you had ended it at season 2, like if we try to jump into the prescriptive part of how would you have ended it then? How would you, the central question here is how do you end a franchise? How do you end Sex and the City?
I don't think you have your main character end up single. I don't have an issue with a character remaining single, like, obviously, but I don't think that makes sense for the show, and it does not make sense for Carrie. Carrie likes being in a relationship, and she wants to find love, and that's kind of her whole goal. I mean, she finds parts of herself and is a good friend along the way, but I don't get the sense that friendships are strengthened by the end, and I don't get the sense that relationships are strengthened, because Miranda, what does she end up doing? Is she alone?
Okay. So the one good thing they do with Miranda in all of the 3 seasons of the revival is the knockdown, drag-out fight she has with Steve in season 3.
That was really, really good.
That's the only moment where he feels like Steve.
And he actually calls her out, and, like, they have a fight, and, like, they both, like, say some kind of shitty things, and they react as humans would. That was a really good scene.
And then she makes amends. And by the end of season 3... I think that is good ending for Miranda when they're together in Coney Island and they're working on building a stable friendship and co-parenting arrangement. I actually do think they ended well for Miranda.
Yeah, that was good.
But that's 1 out of 4 original leads.
And we haven't even talked about Charlotte. I mean, there's not much to say. Charlotte doesn't really have a story.
She's not as stupid as they make her.
They make her so stupid.
The character's funny in Sex and the City. She's not stupid.
Yeah, and in the original show, she's a little naive.
Yes.
But she wouldn't still be naive 20 years later after being married and having 2 kids. Like, so they make her incredibly stupid, and her whole arc is just her and Harry having little hijinks. And then she goes back to work for a little bit and, like, can't handle that because she's also a mom. Or
renovating a hallway.
And it's
very strange.
And they do the cancer scare with Harry. And then, like, that's kind of it. Like, she really doesn't get to do anything. And so I didn't feel like Charlotte's story or arc was even addressed, much less resolved. It was like they didn't know what to do with her.
But it also doesn't feel like Charlotte.
No, it doesn't feel like her at all. It's really, really weird. I liked Harry, but I always like Harry. So, but that was disappointing. And I just think that the show is about love and relationships, but it's also so much about friendship. And I didn't feel a sense of the girls coming together and, like, being stronger as friends after going through everything they go through in this part of the show. We really don't get any of that. It's just they occasionally hang out and both, like, give off-screen exposition about what they've been doing since the last episode they saw each other, and that's kind of it. So much of season 3 happens off-screen. Did you notice that?
Yes.
There's so much of that. So, I mean, ending it would have to be more focused on friendship and more focused on wrapping up things happening with each character, I guess.
I think the lesson we can take from this franchise is if you're going to come back for a revival, which you shouldn't, you need all the principal leads.
Yep. And you need to refer to the original text.
Yes, exactly. And you need to make sure the characters feel like they did.
I just don't feel like the writers of the show, which I know it's not true because we have a lot of the same people carrying over, but it feels like they didn't read the original or didn't watch the original show, or they didn't go back and rewatch or reread scripts to like remind themselves about what things characters have already done and how they react to certain things.
I think there are enough new crew members, new writers, that you can say, I think it's fair to say that they didn't capture the essence of the original show. And at least from my understanding of Sex and the City, they didn't love or seem to emulate what I loved about the original show.
Yes. I feel like the things they took from it were not for me, the good things about the original show.
So if we had a little time traveling device here and we could choose a moment where this thing ended to stop the bleeding, would it be at the end of season 2? Or would you not even have it just like that? Would you end with the first movie?
Yeah, Cam, I wouldn't do it. I would just end with the first movie.
I think that's fair.
If anything, for Samantha.
That's a lot. Cutting off 3 seasons and a movie of a franchise, that is tough.
I mean, we're still rewatching the original show. As we're watching it, I'm choosing to ignore what happens in And Just Like That, because we're at the point in the show where Steve and Miranda are kind of trying to get back together after their first breakup. And so I'm just sitting there choosing to believe that Miranda never leaves Steve, because why would she? That makes no sense.
This is an interesting point, and I think this is where I want to wrap up each of these 3 things. Does this ending that's way too long, does the rest of what happens in this franchise after the point we've just decided should have been the true ending, does all of that extra stuff tarnish the legacy?
No, I just look at it as a very silly little flop that happens that we don't need to talk about.
But there's such a time difference here between the original series movies and the revival that I think on a generational level, it has done some damage to the legacy of the original, or turned people off of it.
For many people it has, yeah. But for me, it just makes the original show look so much better. It makes me love and appreciate the original show much, much more. And it makes me really favor that as the true canon of the story.
And to some degree, I think that's your right. I think franchises become, the longer they run, the more a la carte they become.
Absolutely. The more you can choose to ignore parts of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that was the meatball.
I feel like we had to get that one out, get the sin out. That was a big discussion. We haven't talked about the show at all on this show, so I'm glad that we did that. So, I cannot recommend the original Sex and the City enough. If you haven't watched it, it's so good.
It's the best couple show ever made.
Yeah.
Okay. For the second one, let's go back to The Conjuring.
Okay, that sounds good. Can we take a moment and pause and everybody make fun of the way Cam says Conjuring? His New England accent makes him say Conjuring. And when I was going back and listening to our Conjuring Last Rites episode, I was like, Cam, you don't know how to say the word conjuring.
So, I didn't know that was an original thing. I didn't realize I did that.
Because instead of saying roof, you say roof. It's just, you say room instead of room. You guys are weird up there. Anyway, if you're from New England, comment down below and I'll make fun of you. Okay, go forward. I'm sorry.
So we did an episode on The Conjuring a couple weeks ago. And for a little context, in case you didn't listen to that one, or you're not a horror person context? Or whatever. For a little context there, The Conjuring had 4 mainline movies with the word conjuring in the title, and then 5 spin-offs dealing with ancillary demons and backstories.
Yes.
And seemingly, we've gone out on top, because this one, which was billed as the final Conjuring movie with our principal characters, was a massive, unbelievable box office record-breaking financial success.
Yeah, it's done very well.
But, and here's where, that's the context, and now we get to talk about the ending, because I think where we can agree here is that this ending comes 2 movies after the artistic peak of this central mainline series. And this last movie spent a good deal of the finale setting up the next generation.
I mean, yeah, that's my biggest gripe with this ending, is that it tries to end it, but not really, because what if we did more movies? I mean, I think we got into this a bit in our discussion on this movie, but I think that the idea of passing off to the next generation is fine to do in an ending of a franchise, because it implies that this work is never complete. The show goes on, life carries on. Ed and Lorraine's story has ended, but this important work with paranormal stuff always continues. I don't mind that idea, in abstract. That's interesting, because of course paranormal investigation doesn't end when Ed and Lorraine stop working. So I get it. But they worked.
It ends when you realize it's fake.
Well, yeah. I was gonna the title card at the end where they're like trying to like pay homage to the important work, and my favorite line is it says something about how like the scientific community ignored them for a long time. I'm like, girly, they're still ignoring them because it's not science. What are you talking about? Like, the implication was that now this is scientifically accepted as real science. I thought that was so funny. Anyway, that's a different thing. That's just into the sensationalism of the movie. It's fine. But they worked so hard. They spent so much time setting up the daughter. What's her name? What the fuck is her name?
That was weeks ago.
Who cares?
The daughter is now
setting up the daughter and her boyfriend.
Judy?
Yes, Judy and like Tom or whatever the fuck his name is. Setting them
Tony,
up. Tony, yes.
Wow,
setting up Judy and Tony as like, these are really, really, really important characters. Let's give them a lot of screen time. That feels so much like they're going to have their own movie next. And that feels like a disingenuous ending. And it's fine if your franchise is going to continue, but don't pretend it's ending. I think that's what really got me, was that they were trying to do two things at once, where they end the thing and also really try to keep the door open for additional entries. That's what made me feel icky.
Again, to the point where you have executives in interviews around the time of release talking about phase 2 of the cinematic universe.
Right.
So I would argue that this ending, despite being billed as the big final ending, and I believe that, I believe that Vera Farmiga and Patrick Wilson are now going to move on.
Yeah.
Our two leads are moving on.
And their story is over, yeah.
The series is so based on these quote-unquote true cases that these real people worked on. I don't know how many scare quotes I can put in one sentence.
these scams that these people did, yeah.
That it means they could make hundreds of movies just like this.
Yes.
And maybe they'll end up recasting or doing prequels with younger actors playing these characters, whatever. The takeaway here is this big curtain call ending is not really an ending.
Right.
I think it becomes a passing of the torch, the next generation for this endless studio franchise. It felt like a cop-out. As emotionally satisfying as it could be, as an ending, it still felt like a cop-out. And now that we're a couple weeks out, this movie felt more like a graduation for the original cast and crew than it did an end of a franchise. I
agree. It was strange. And I think the other I have another point, but do you want to talk more about the graduation?
No, it just the series feels really, really weird in my head now. The Conjuring, did I say it right that time?
Yeah, it was all right.
See, now you've made me second guess myself.
So
there
sorry.
goes the confidence.
The confidence. This is what I can't figure out because it's not consistent. That's why it's confusing to me.
If you have all the franchises I love in my head, like an attic sitting there, The Conjuring is now in the corner like this weird zombie that I resent. And I know it's going to get up and move around again. And I don't want it to. I just want it to sit in the toy box.
Okay. Yeah. No, yeah, I know what you're saying. But no, I think one thing that got me about this was it wasn't just it's an ending, but it's not, with the passing of the torch to the daughter. It was also that it didn't feel like a finale. The movie is so billed as, this was the case that broke the family. This was the case that ended it all. This was the most intense case ever. And it was like the lamest haunting I've ever seen. Like, nothing about the case was particularly interesting or bombastic or like scandalous or perplexing or like mysterious. It was just, there's these three spirits and there's this mirror.
Their daughter started dating and they dragged a mirror down a hallway.
Yeah, there was absolutely nothing that was unique or like groundbreaking or world earth-shattering about this case. And so not only was the passing of the torch thing confusing and like misrepresented, it also just wasn't a grand finale. It was kind of like a mid case. That was also really disappointing to me.
So if we can jump out to where we can control the universe again, how would you end the Conjuring franchise?
Well, I would pick a better case, especially because at the end of the title cards, they say like they continued to work for 20 more years. I'm like, but wasn't this the last case? Which is it? So pick actually the last one, or don't tell me that they do more, but just whatever. You're setting the standards of your reality, so do that. But have the case be more intertwined with the family, because you could tell they were trying to intertwine it with like, this is the same demon that was in the mirror when you were pregnant and blah, blah, blah. But it felt so like just kind of written in there and didn't really feel like it was actually intertwined with the case. So make the case much more personal and make it much more dangerous. I mean, they do that really well in The Conjuring 2. The Conjuring 2 like has the case with the kids in England, but there's also all the stuff with Valak and the nun and what's his name, Ed, and that's all really, really interesting. It feels very personal, and I liked that. This like just makes the vaguest attempts at that, so I would have it more intertwined with the family and with Judy, and I would have there be a reason why Ed and Lorraine stop after this, because I didn't get a sense that there was a reason other than, well, that was hard or that was scary, or Ed almost had a heart attack, but they already did that in the last one, so I didn't really understand that either. What would you do?
I think it's the end because they called it the end. But if they wanted it to be the end, and the central element for this franchise is this central marriage, I think if you're going to do a big montage sweeping into the future and showing the grandkids and all that, I think you need to show these two die. Or one of them. You're
right. I think we got to see one of them die. Yeah.
But also, I could argue that the franchise ended at the end of the second one.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, it's just, James Wan is an impossible act to follow. That's not an insult to anyone.
Sure.
He just is a master of this genre. Mm-hmm. So if there's a bunch of years in between 2 and 3, and there's a drop-off in quality, in case quality, in the look of the thing, it's diminishing returns, I think.
Yeah, I agree. So it was a strange ending. I mean, we didn't dislike the movie per se. We talked a lot about how much we liked the movie. We liked a lot of the character work that goes on in this movie. The case was fine. The scares were, whatever. Yeah. But we enjoyed the movie overall. It just wasn't a good ending.
And to put it in conversation with And Just Like That, we're the first podcast to do that, I don't think they They didn't continue long enough to the point where it felt like they were betraying central characters.
No. I still really liked the way Ed and Lorraine were written here.
They didn't break anyone. No. They didn't do a revival with half the characters missing.
And it still felt like a Conjuring movie. It didn't feel like as good as some of the other Conjuring movies.
It didn't feel as special as the first two.
Right.
It was serviceable.
Yeah, I was like, this is a Conjuring movie.
Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And we have to look at this differently, because when And Just Like That was canceled, it came with the announcement of, this is it for the whole franchise. Mm-hmm. This one almost has the opposite, where it was released as the ending while they were saying there's going to be more.
Yeah.
So when you ask the question of how do you end the Conjuring franchise, and the answer is you don't until they stop making money. I guess that's the implication of all of this.
Sure.
I guess you have to ask the question of what do you do now? And I think the question then becomes, do you leave Ed and Lorraine alone?
I think you have
Do you follow the kid, or do you do the adventures of young Ed and Lorraine? Those are the two paths here.
Ooh,
because I've seen some grumblings that there's going to be a prequel movie.
Yeah, see, that could be good. I would enjoy. You think? I would enjoy that. Yeah,
I grew up watching the VHSs of young Indiana Jones.
Yeah,
and I do not remember those fondly.
Well, we talked about this. The actors who play at young Ed and Lorraine in the flashback in this last movie were quite good. And so I would enjoy that. I also I love a period piece. I love period horror. And by the time we get to Conjuring Last Rites, we're in the 80s. So it's barely period anymore, at least for my sensibilities, even though I didn't even live in the 80s. But if we do, vintage flashback, early days Ed and Lorraine, we're getting like the 50s. And that's cool. So I kind of want to do that.
I respect your optimism. I would counter with the idea that if you take away James Wan, Vera Farmiga, and Patrick Wilson, why am I buying a ticket?
That's a great point.
At some point,
then James Wan needs to direct it. If we're gonna do that, we gotta have James Wan.
But there's some rumblings behind the scenes that he's having major problems with that studio as well.
He is. Yeah.
So I don't think that's likely.
Okay. Well, would you be interested in following Judy and what's his name, Tony?
I would have before the James Wan news. I think that was a major red flag.
So same
for me.
Problem.
I think we're approaching Ship of Theseus territory here.
I see what you mean. Yeah. I mean, the thing is, they're gonna make more. I know they're gonna, and we're gonna watch them.
I mean, honestly, I think you prove yourself on the outskirts before attempting a new Conjuring movie. In the same way,
so you do like more like spin-offs, like Annabelle and stuff.
Yes, in the same way, there hasn't been a mainline Avengers movie since Endgame.
That's true.
And that's been many years.
Black Widow, we've had Spider-Man.
A million other movies.
Yeah, okay.
But much longer than the interim usually is between Avengers films. I think the last movie in this universe that was really good was The Nun 2. And I know both Nun movies did really well for them. I would like them to make a couple more Nun movies that are great.
I think they should do a totally new thing. That's what I think they should do.
Yeah, like you've done Annabelle.
Explore another item in the Conjuring basement. Like just pick another object. There are a million in there.
Yes, exactly. But I would like them to keep going with those while they figure out and kind of, as much as you can, perfect what the mainline series will continue.
I agree. They shouldn't rush into another mainline movie. They need to play around in their very, opulent sandbox. There's
especially as you lose most of the high-profile creatives on the franchise. I think you do need to prove yourself Because when we've seen
That's
this
true.
how many times with long-running franchises, when you have new creatives come in, thrown into the deep end of the pool, it's not always a pretty picture.
Well, and that's kind of what, I mean, the director of this was Michael Chavez. Is that his name? I mean, he did La Llorona, which has now since been removed from the Conjuring universe, but he did that and he did The Nun too. And so he got to kind of build up and prove
Conjuring
himself.
3.
Well, he did Conjuring 3 as well? Okay, so he got to do those to get into here. So I think they need to bring in, somebody new to kind of demonstrate their prowess.
One of the things I liked about The Nun, because I don't know why the Annabelle movies just never appealed to me.
We've never seen them.
I like that character. I know that they explicitly tie into Ed and Lorraine more.
Mm-hmm.
I never felt any draw to watch them.
Yeah.
Maybe it was that they didn't feel necessary. We've heard those kind of arguments before.
Sure, yeah.
But the thing I loved about The Nun was, I mean, one, how beautiful it looked.
Looked gorgeous.
But also that it felt independent and homework-free because it was a period piece.
Yeah.
So I think maybe the way to go is with young Ed and Lorraine. I think the period piece part is essential here.
I think what we can do is maybe pick an object from the Conjuring basement that has its own life kind of outside Ed and Lorraine in its origins. And then we get a hint at young Ed and Lorraine and how they connect to it. Like, the movie's not centered around them, but you get, a cameo. You get some sort of connection that feels rewarding and exciting and enriches your understanding of the fuller story, but is not focused on them. Because you're right. If we have an Ed and Lorraine focused movie that's not Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga, then it's not going to be very exciting.
Whatever it is, and it can take any shape and be successful, of course. I mean, I trust the remaining creatives.
Sure.
But I want it to feel creepy and simple. I keep seeing gifs pop up from the original Conjuring. Am I saying it right?
I'm
tripping
sorry.
on it every time now.
I didn't mean to mess you up. I'm so sorry.
The magic of that original movie for me is when the wife is putting up the laundry outside and the sheet flies off and lands on this figure
on a
standing
body.
there.
Uh-huh.
And then the figure that you'd never see, you just see the kind of bed sheet shaped around a person. And then the person disappears and the sheet flies away.
Oh, it's such a good scare.
Or during the exorcism at the end in the basement, the mom has the sheet on her head the whole time. So you never see the thing.
Yeah.
Which means the fear factor of the movie is all atmospheric. It's
Imagined.
set dressing, it's implication.
Which is so much scarier than here's 15 shots of the weird old lady demon.
Yes. It's all we talked about this in the episode on Last Rites of the Marilyn Manson cosplay and the diminishing returns of
Gets
that.
old, yeah.
And the mirror dragging down the hallway. I think there was too much money and not enough vision in those sequels. And all there is in the originals, just vision. So yeah, I would want it to go back to basics, and I think that probably means prove yourselves on the periphery first.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
But for me, how do you end the Conjuring franchise? Just to pivot back to our central question.
Sure.
I think you stop making them after the second one.
Yeah.
I think that was, if we're back in the time machine, I think that was the move.
I think we need to not be having cinematic universes. I think that's something that needs to stop. I'm a little tired of it.
Now, I guess to throw a wrench in this, to wrap up this segment, there have been some rumors about a Conjuring TV show, which presumably would be young Ed and Lorraine.
That's interesting. Would it be like episodic, or would it be like a continuous story that lasts
I hope
for 10
it would
episodes?
be procedural.
I would, because I would watch that. I would
like
watch
the case files, almost
Exactly.
like the Lilo and Stitch show, where you have a new experiment
of all the different experiments.
Yes.
See, like, that's a good idea. So it's like, so it's not a full movie about this random merry-go-round that you have in your, haunted closet, but instead it's like one 45-minute episode about this thing. Like, and maybe there is some larger overarching story about them. Maybe it's them. I don't know what their origin is. Like, did they get married and then do this together? Did they meet doing this? Like, that could be like, how do they fall in love? I don't know. But yeah, maybe just like individual episodes about each haunted thing.
That's how I would end it.
Really
I would
cool.
make the Lorraine, Ed and Lorraine. Lorraine always feels like a last name to me. I would do the Warren case files as a show, and whenever that is canceled, that's canceled, and that's it. But just have a bunch of procedural case files stacked up over there. In very much the same way you do with like the X-Files.
Yes.
I think that would be excellent.
That would be really, really cool.
On to our third franchise, which is having its, well, we'll get there. Let's talk about Downton Abbey, the grand finale.
Okay, let's do it.
Another show that we have never talked about here on the podcast, but has been, at least for me, a big part of my life.
Yeah.
I watched this the whole time it was on. I've rewatched it a number of times. So this started in 2010, Downton Abbey, and it ran for 6 seasons, which in terms of British TVs, that's forever.
Yeah, that's a lot. They don't usually go that long. Like the multiple seasons of a TV show, that's a very American thing.
Look at The Office. You have 12 episodes of the original version and then 12 seasons of the US version. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
So this was an international sensation. That's how you get 6 seasons out of it. And then you have a series finale at the end of that 6th season.
Yes.
And then you have 3 reunion movies. And again, each one of those has a plausible ending.
Yes, it feels like this could be where the whole thing ends.
It could have been fine ending with the show, and then each one of the movies wraps it up in a tidy little bow. So already you have 4 plausible endings within the same franchise, where it's never guaranteed, is the movie going to do well? Can we get a movie made?
Right.
There's never a guarantee of more. And all of those 4 endings are satisfactory. Those were all good enough notes to end the franchise on.
Certainly, yeah.
And then we get this last one, this third movie, Downton Abbey, the grand finale. Do you want to talk about this ending?
Sure. I loved this ending. I mean, I never actually finished the original show. I think I stopped watching around season 4 or 5. Not because the show wasn't good. It was just like on in a time in my life where I didn't have a lot of time dedicated to watching this show in particular, and I just wasn't all that interested anymore. I mean, the lore of me is that once Matthew dies, I stop caring because I'm so mad that they got rid of Matthew. I know Dan Stevens wanted to move on and do other things, and that's fine, but the show is not the same without Matthew, and whatever.
Some shows you lose one character and you can't survive that.
Yeah, right. And I felt like the show was much the worse after Matthew dies, but whatever.
You're right.
I'm right. But I really liked this movie. I thought it was very sweet. I mean, it was a little cheesy, but as all Downton stuff is, especially as you get later on in this series and in the movies. But
saccharine would be a fair word.
It's a little saccharine, but
that's fine.
It was lovely.
It's earnest.
Exactly. We spent a lot of time with each, like with major characters. We gave everybody like a nice clean wrap up. I thought that Hugh Bonneville, what's his name, Lord Grantham, and
Robert,
Lord Grantham and Cora leaving Downton to go to let Mary take over was a really, really finally we're doing that, because they've been talking about Mary taking over for forever, but finally she got to do it. I really liked that. I liked the way that they wrapped up Carson retiring, and Thomas finally has a happy life, which was great. Mrs. Patmore retires and Daisy takes over. It was just this great passing of the torch. And this does well what the Conjuring Last Rites did not. It doesn't imply that the entire story is over, as in the characters die and nothing else could possibly happen. It's not that kind of ending, but it's it's okay. Downton will continue, Downton will go on, but it will also adapt as the world adapts, which is sort of the running theme of the whole show is change is constantly happening and we have to change with the world. I really liked that they continued that. So the idea is that Downton will continue, Mary will be there, servants will be there, but it will change as time goes on. But our main characters have had satisfying, complete arcs, and there are new chapters in their lives, but we are finished with the chapter that we're following. I thought the ending was great. I really liked it.
Of the 3 that we're talking about here, this was by far the most graceful ending.
Yes, for sure. It did not feel clumsy or rushed or stumbled or weird. It felt good.
It's well balanced too. You get like you said, the spotlight shines on everyone. Everyone gets their moment. It's a swan song. It's a curtain call. It's a farewell. All of these things, which can feel earnest and saccharine and kind of cheesy, I guess, to use the word you said before.
Sure. And none of it was necessary. That's the thing. This ending was not necessary. We could have ended much longer ago. Everything that happens in this movie is nice to see, nice to know, but I don't think it was necessary.
I think this movie did a lot of the things that they've been teasing and fainting in the direction of for many years now.
That's true.
Finally having Robert retire and pass the torch to Mary. That's something that's been in the air since before the main show ended.
Yeah.
Finally doing that and showing that goes well and we can love each other through these weird changes, that was meaningful for me. And the other big thing was the way they resolved this relationship and at times rivalry between Edith and Mary.
I did like that. This was like we said after seeing the movie, this is the first time we didn't like really dislike Edith. Edith is such a complex, messy character. She's kind of like Miranda, original Miranda in Sex and the City, in that she's like kind of grating, kind of annoying, but like she's interesting and messy and makes mistakes, and you're interested in that. But and it's not that she was a different person in this movie, certainly not. You just saw that she'd grown, and she and Mary's relationship has strengthened over time as they've gone through all the things they've gone through together.
And the problem that we have highlighted in the other two parts of this discussion, a lot of it comes down to continuity of writing. Julian Fellows wrote every episode of every season of the show and all three of these movies.
Yeah, and it shows.
So you can see a really clean, beautiful, sophisticated arc for some of these characters.
And he understands all of these characters. Yeah.
Like Edith. I mean, you talked about her being flawed and thorny and interesting. And a lot of that is from insecurity. And her life by comparison to Mary's life.
Yes. And she's like this middle child. She's not as like well liked as her other sisters. And even after Sybil dies, like, and Edith becomes the youngest, she still very much reads as middle child. I can say that because I'm a middle child. I'm a middle daughter, actually, so I get it, Edith. But like I always get her. I don't always like her, and sometimes I'm really irritated by her, but I always get her, and I still got her in this one too, and that was great.
And it kind of did that with a soft touch, or with a light touch. It wasn't heavy-handed, I guess is what I'm saying, because Mary, I always like Mary. Just as a lady, I can't help it.
I love Mary.
And I enjoy Edith. I enjoy how complicated and messy she is. But it was so graceful, to go back to that word, to have Mary on the back foot here and Edith quietly, tactfully help her out. And then have a moment of recognition towards the end of the film that isn't the thing that you and I bemoan in these long-running franchises where people apologize profusely and are emotionally intelligent, and it feels as mechanical
and perfectly articulate every single thought and feeling they've ever had about every issue ever, so they can wrap it all up in a bow.
And that always feels inhuman.
Incredibly.
It shatters the characters and the immersion in the world. This wasn't that at all. It was slightly awkward. It was brief. It was understated, but it was an acknowledgement. It was a private moment of gratitude. And I think that's as heightened as the British emotion could possibly become.
Well, I was going to say, one of the things we also noticed in this movie is as saccharine and, very overly...
schmaltzy?
Yeah, as this movie is, we still get this like British sensibility where all these characters are having these sort of like final like goodbyes or acknowledgements, but they're not fully saying what they're feeling, and nobody hugs.
Stiff upper lip.
Like there's a moment between Mary and Anna, especially. So Anna is, of course, Mary's lady's maid, right? She's been her maid for years. And this is like the moment where they're, I think, no longer going to be working with each other. Or is she going to follow? I don't fucking remember. Who cares? It's sort of a goodbye for them. It doesn't matter.
You're right, though.
It's sort of a goodbye for them. And Mary is telling Anna how much she appreciates her, and they're back and forth. And then they just kind of stand there, and then they separate. And like, for Americans, that would be the moment where you hug. Like, where two female friends who have known each other for years, like, are tearfully saying goodbye, they would hug each other. But they don't hug here because English ladies in the 1930s don't hug each other, especially if they're of different classes. And I think this show, to like contrast it with And Just Like That, this show is deeply interested in class and is interested in showcasing the 1% compared to the 99% and talking about how those two groups of people interact, but also sort of breaking down the like us versus them dynamic that we would expect to see. Like, that's what the first few seasons do so well.
I think to extend that comparison, I think it also has a much richer examination of queer issues.
Absolutely.
Thomas is my favorite character.
Mine too.
And that doesn't mean he's the best character. He's just the one, because we don't have Matthew anymore. Thomas is the one who has the most interesting arc.
Yes.
Who is such a shit, is in so much pain,
yeah.
Goes to so many places. He's one of the few characters that carries the show alone and gets a side story in the same way in The Office when Jim goes off to Stanford. The crew follows him. The story follows him there. Thomas is one of the few characters who drags the show along with him.
Yes, versus like Rose, who like leaves the show, and others.
And we leave her behind. But I'm so interested in his story, and there is such pain and villainy within his character. I loved the happiness they gave him.
Me too.
At the end of the second movie, after acknowledging do you remember when he was in the gay bar that was raided?
Oh my God, that was so sad.
It was terrifying and heartbreaking.
Yeah.
And then they gave him this kind of implication of happiness at the end of the second one. And that felt like, okay, he's earned it. He's been suffering for, at that point, it was like 12 years of this franchise. But for him to come back here and for us to confirm that he has this life with Dominic West of all people was so wonderful. And then he gets to go up. He instead of being in the like servants' quarters downstairs, he goes up and has tea, not even in the right clothes, with all of the lord and ladies and fancy people.
Yeah, that was really sweet. And I liked that we saw the other characters' interactions with and confrontations of Thomas's new life, because you see, like, because it's unsaid because it's the 30s and it's illegal, which is like such a fucking tragedy. But they go to Thomas's show and they go backstage, and like you can tell Mary and Edith know, right? And they're like being very cool about it, and definitely Lord Grantham does not know, and nobody's gonna tell him, and he's kind of confused of like, oh, they must know each other really well, and they're like, yep, Dad, that's what it is. And so it simultaneously is a moment of comedy. It's a moment of character to understand all of these characters and who they are. And it also is like addressing and examining how that actually would have been at that time, and the simultaneous tragedy of not being able to be out, but also like the sweetness of the characters who are accepting and quiet about it. Like, it's a really wonderful, like, complex moment in the story.
And there's a critique within the kind of ironic staging of these people who are embarrassed by improper behavior, like a divorce at the time was considered improper behavior.
Very much, yeah.
Them saving their social cachet by hosting a party with a gay celebrity.
Yes, exactly.
And I think the movie, without, again, staring into the camera and explaining it to you, I think it explores that irony and, the exploitation of that.
Yes.
Pretty sharply.
It's really, really interesting. And you can see the characters, like the gay characters themselves, being aware of how they're being used or looked at. And trying to navigate that the best that they can. It's a sad reality that they're existing in, but they are navigating it in a really interesting way. And you feel for them and are like proud of them and happy for them and sad for them all at the same time.
This was an incredibly satisfying ending while also being neat and understated. But to ask kind of the broader question, the film is called Downton Abbey, the grand finale. Do we believe that this is the end of the overall franchise?
I do. I think calling it that is really a statement, because of course the series ends with the end of season 6, but there's always the possibility of more, and of course they do the movies. The first movie is called A New Era, or is that the second one?
That's the second one.
What's the first one called?
Downton Abbey the movie.
Oh, okay. So like
it's one of those,
whatever.
Yeah.
But
the major motion picture.
But A New Era is such a good title for movie too, because you could see it as an ending or as a possibility for more. Because a new era implies that we're starting a new chapter, like we're entering a new era, and so like that's sort of the end of our story, but more continues. Or you can view it as it's a new era of Downton, and we're gonna do more and more and more. So there's a lot of ambiguity in that title compared to this one, which is the grand finale. I mean, how much clearer can you be? And like, I don't think there's a world where we watch Downton Abbey where Lord Grantham and Cora don't live there anymore. Like, I think that's weird. I think also what really solidified it for me was in the end when Mary is having the flashback scene where she's kind of in that ballroom and she has all the flashback moments where she remembers everybody standing there. That one got me good.
It's a great finale.
Because it starts with Matthew, and I teared up.
So
because Matthew appears on screen. And then you see Sybil and everybody who's ever been there. It was lovely.
To draw the comparison more explicitly, what did you think of that montage compared to the montage at the end of The Conjuring?
I thought this was way better, because the Conjuring montage is looking forward and giving you an imagined future. And it feels like an ending kind of as like kind of like the end of 6 Feet Under, where this is how it all goes at the end. We're not going to see it, but you'll see it right here. And that kind of satisfies you. But this felt more like an ending because it was reflective as here's everywhere we've been. And so it doesn't feel like there's any more to do after that, because then you're going to have to remember again. Do you know what I mean? Like this felt very conclusive and satisfying, and like we are wrapping up this very like wide-reaching, complex, multi-layered story all right here.
It was retrospective. I think you've actually kind of convinced me of this, because I had this weird, I don't know, this feeling in the back of my head through all three of these movies that there was always this tease. There was always this thing we dangled in front of the audience at the end of, hey, maybe would you watch a show if Mary was at the helm?
Yeah.
And I would.
Well, yes, of course I would.
But and then you get to the point where the first two movies did so well, and the third one's doing fairly well now, that maybe, okay, we'll just keep making these things every few years until the audience falls off or too much of the cast doesn't want to do it anymore. Mm-hmm. But I think you've kind of changed my mind on that, because in terms of movies, 3 is a magical number. Now you can say 6 seasons of a show and a trilogy of movies.
Exactly. Feels very complete.
If you go past that, and honestly, I might argue for a show, because if you're comparing it to Sex and the City, you have, was it 6 seasons?
It was 6 seasons.
Okay, yeah.
2 movies.
So you have 6 seasons, then a couple movies, then maybe you go back and do it properly. I think it would be a different conversation if Julian Fellows wasn't doing the Gilded Age right now.
I agree.
But the fact that he's doing another period piece exploring class and history that is successfully going into its 4th season, to the point that viewership has gone up in season 3.
Which is like unheard of.
Incredibly rare.
Yeah.
I think there's no need for him to do more Downton. But
I totally agree.
I don't know. You changed my mind here, because I was going to say, I feel like there's a bit of a crack open in the door still.
No, I don't see what you're identifying as a crack. I just see that as an implication that these characters' lives are not over. The story of Downton is not over, but our telling of it is over. I think it is conclusive enough, and the looks ahead are just subtle enough that I really don't think they're going to keep going.
I guess the one thing that felt like a pulled punch in these movies is Branson.
Yeah, there wasn't enough Branson in this movie. That's like my biggest complaint.
And you didn't finish the show proper.
No, I didn't.
You didn't see the last season or so.
Yeah.
But I really like the role that Branson comes to fill after Sybil's gone, when it's him, Robert, and Mary trying to run the estate. I think he almost becomes more of a partner, a business partner, a colleague to Mary.
Yes.
And I think that camaraderie is fascinating. So every time a movie would end and we would think, okay, it's the next generation and Maggie Smith doesn't want to do more of these, so I guess Mary is the new Maggie Smith. In my head, I was always interested to see how Branson would fit into that equation.
I see.
And I feel like they kept their powder dry and barely used him in the second or third movies. And I think Alan Leitch has done such a beautiful job with that character. His reaction when Sybil is dying. The death of Matthew hit me harder because I think that was a better character.
Yes.
But Branson's reaction to Sybil dying is the apex of the entire series emotionally.
Yeah, that really hurt me. I didn't like watching it.
So I always felt like they were kind of pulling that punch of, if we do the Mary thing, then we can explore all of this other stuff with Branson.
I see.
And the fact that he was barely in this movie, it felt like maybe they were tinkering with some stuff, but I don't know. A trilogy's, it's hard to push against the logic of a clean, successful trilogy.
Yeah, I think that the lack of Branson is not because there's a promise of more. I think it's just maybe Julian Fellows is less interested in him. Maybe the actor is not willing to do as many scenes or spend as much time filming. I don't know, but I don't think that's an implication that there's going to be more. Also, interestingly, to compare this again to And Just Like That, here we have our main female lead ending up single, and it works perfectly. Because she, in this whole movie, she's gotten divorced from her shitty second husband, who she shouldn't have married in the first place because the love of her life died. And after that, you don't get married again. Sorry, you just don't. It's a
also,
betrayal.
He just wasn't available to shoot the movies. Because I love Matthew Good as the actor, and I love him as an actor.
Yeah, it's not. I have nothing against him. I just don't think Mary should have been with anybody else.
But he could be. I think he could have been her equal. I really wish that had worked out, because I think he would.
Sure.
That would have been a great show.
Sure, but I think Mary ending up single is interesting if she's kind of meant to be taking over the role of Maggie Smith's character, who also by the end of the show is single because her husband has died.
That's a great point.
And Mary's husband is also dead, and the other one divorced her. So I think Mary being alone and us ending on the portrait of Maggie Smith's character and it saying, in memory of Maggie Smith, like Dame Maggie Smith, right? I kind of like that. And Mary already has kids from Matthew and possibly from the other one. I don't remember. It doesn't matter. So she has heirs. She has sons. She has heirs. So that's not an issue. So if we want to deal with like that societal challenge, she's got heirs. So she's all set there. She doesn't need to get married again. And I think, and Mary wouldn't, because she's so independent and has so many strong ideas. And if she got married now, it'd be some dude trying to come in and run Downton for her, and that wouldn't work. So I like her ending up single. I think it makes way more sense than Carrie Bradshaw ending up single.
And it's the execution as much as it is the concept.
Exactly. It makes sense. In just like that, it didn't make any sense.
So are you glad with this ending? Is that where you would end this franchise?
This is exactly how I would end it. I think it's lovely.
That's a
really
rare thing.
It. I know. Are you happy with it? Is this what you would do? Or, minus adding more Branson?
Yes. I think that's my one hang up. But besides that, I thought it was a fantastic finale. I loved this movie. I love all of this. I've always loved Downton. I know some people don't, and I don't care.
I love it.
I just like it. It's wonderful, and I think there are seasons that are not their best, but I think each movie has been stronger than the last. And the first one wasn't bad, so that's a compliment.
Yeah, no, it's been great.
I'm very happy with this. And to return to the legacy question, because we kind of skipped that for Conjuring.
Oh, yeah.
Conjuring having an ending that's okay and not really an ending and kind of past its prime, but hey, it made some money. That's fine. That doesn't hurt the ending. That doesn't hurt the legacy of that sweeping franchise.
Yeah,
that's
fine. So, yeah.
I think this ending being so powerful, particularly with that montage of Mary looking back as she steps into the future. And it's kind of a Haunting of Hill House sort of scene.
A little bit,
where it's her in this beautiful manor surrounded by a bunch of ghosts. But it's not melancholy as much as it is a feeling of love.
Yes, and like gratitude.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think that note is so incredibly hard to pull off and earn. The fact that they did it perfectly here, yes, this is the moment to walk away. This is the walk-off home run where you don't jinx it, you cash out and leave the casino. At this point, as many metaphors as I can fit into one sentence. That's the new task.
Got it.
No, I think this is the perfect moment to leave. I think, if anything, it almost enhances the legacy.
That's what I was going to say. It actually makes the show better.
Yes.
Because you're right. Towards the later seasons, I stopped watching because the show didn't get bad, but it wasn't as good, and so I didn't prioritize it. Yeah. And it's not as good as like seasons 1 through 3. And so I think this really good ending makes the show as a whole feel so much better. And you end the show, what you want your franchise ending to be is, wow, that series is so good. Not this movie was good, but I love the series Downton Abbey. I love the Conjuring series. I love Sex and the City. Like, that's what you want your ending to feel like, and that's how this one felt. It made me appreciate and feel nostalgic for and love the entire thing and not just this individual entry. It's
a double-sided thing because this ending made me want to go home and rewatch the pilot, but not in the same way that the end of End Just Like That made me want to watch Sex and the City to like wash my mouth out with soap.
Right,
to cleanse
it. Yeah, I want to remember how the original show felt. This is like, I want to do the whole thing over again because the whole thing was so great.
There's an element of comfort where you know it's going to be worth it. You know they're going to stick the landing. It enriches everything that came before.
Yes.
It's crazy. Endings can, just to zoom this out a little bit.
Yeah.
Endings can pay dividends. They can either ruin everything that came before or enrich everything that came before. I have some examples just to kind of popcorn this out as we wrap this up.
Yeah.
I was trying to write out how, the question I was left with in the notes was, what franchise has actually ever ended? Because I couldn't really come up with any. At first I thought, okay, The Sopranos, that was a long time ago. And then I remembered, no, they did a prequel movie. And there's always a threat of more. And then I remembered horror, because we've done so much horror.
Yeah.
No horror franchise has ever ended in
human
history.
They keep doing them. That's just kind of, that's the MO.
If you think they've ended, it's because they haven't rebooted it yet. And then I thought, okay, Breaking Bad, that's one of our favorite shows of all time. But no, they had a movie and then 5 seasons of a spinoff, which was a prequel-sequel sort of show.
Yep.
So that one didn't really end, and there's always a threat of more. And then I thought, okay, Harry Potter. That was 7 books, 8 movies that shaped our childhood. That was great. It was done. It's, no. There's Fantastic Beasts, which is an incomplete prequel series.
Right.
Which can slightly tarnish a legacy just by the fact of it failing and not having a source material.
Yep.
And then you have The Cursed Child.
Truly cursed.
And I think you can put The Cursed Child on the same shelf within Just Like That for doing damage to the legacy of a franchise.
And not to mention, they're doing the HBO show right now, which has already tarnished the whole thing for me. I can't even get into that.
So yeah, no, and so then I thought, okay, what about Star Wars? We've talked about episodes 4, 5, 6, and 3.
Yes.
Eventually we'll get to 1 and 2.
One day.
They had a trilogy, then a couple decades later they had another trilogy, and then again they had another trilogy. But they also had Rogue One and Solo and The Mandalorian, which had 3 seasons, and now it's going to have a movie. And then they had Boba Fett, and then they had Skeleton Crew, and then they had The Acolyte, and then they had Obi-Wan.
And Andor.
And Andor. So that one's never ending.
No, never ends. Yeah.
And then I thought, okay, we'll go back even further. Before streaming and Netflix and all that, Lord of the Rings was one big book, or it could be 3 books, and it was the most perfect movie trilogy of all time. That's what we made our bones on. We went chapter by chapter through the entire series and The Hobbit. And then you have the Hobbit trilogy, which is based on the source material. It's better than you think. It's 3 movies. But then I remembered the War of the Rohirrim anime, which we actually liked.
We did.
But that's not killing a franchise.
Also, Rings of Power.
And then I remembered Rings of Power, and then I rememred the Gollum movie. So I guess I'm just trying to show my work
and
here.
And okay, Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones, it goes, it's the 8 seasons that the show gets worse and worse once you hit season 5, and that's a whole thing. And it ends, but then there's House of the Dragon. And now they're about to release Night of the Seven Kingdoms. And then there's, I think, other things in the works. So that's never going to end. Nothing ever ends.
There are 6 successor shows in various levels of production.
Yeah. And so because everybody wants to do the MCU, everybody wants to have an ongoing, never-ending prequel, sequel, side... This is me saying fucking side saddle again. Jesus Christ. What's it called? Spin-off. Everybody wants to do that. And they want to have 18 iterations of this story. Nobody will just end it. So nobody will do it.
On this kind of global level that we're looking at the whole world of art and culture here, no franchise ever really ends until people stop caring.
Right.
So if we're trying to make some sort of golden rule for how can you end a franchise, which almost seems like you're begging for help at this point of how do I stop this thing from happening that I used to love, I think the golden rule would be because as we said before, everything comes down to the writing.
Yes.
I think you end a franchise when the original creator says so or stops caring.
I know. I think it's that. And I think it's also you have to come out on top and end before people stop caring. I know that in terms of making money, that's not correct. I know that if this movie can make money, then we'll make it. I get that. I think it's stupid, but I understand the point of entertainment is to make money. Fine. But I still think from a story standpoint, I mean, if you want to use Breaking Bad as the example, if you don't include the spinoffs, Breaking Bad, the original show, ends with season 5 when they were at their most successful. They end because Vince Gilligan, the creator of the show, said, this is where the show should end, so I will end it. Even though they could have done 4 more seasons and people would have watched them.
To take us full circle back to the And Just Like That conversation, Succession.
Yes, that's true. That ended, and that was just 4 seasons that were incredible and very, very successful as the show went on, and they ended it where the original creator decided the show needed to end.
Before it atrophied, before it dragged out?
Before we do... I mean, even like The Office, which is an incredible show, that should have ended at season 5, and it went 4 more seasons. And it continued to be enjoyable and good and funny, and I've watched the whole thing through several times, but it drops off, and it should have ended much sooner, So I think it's less about finding the right way to end it. It's more just end it at the right time, because then you can do it in the right way. If you go too long, it's a lot harder to end it in the right way.
So of all of these franchises that we've discussed here, The Conjuring, Downton Abbey, Sex and the City, using the general term, Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, Star Wars, the only one that we can point to as a successful way to end a franchise is Downton Abbey.
Yes.
Every other one is some level of qualified, you got to squint and not look over here at this spinoff that was shit.
And you know why? Because it's the same creator the whole way through.
That's what I'm saying.
That's what it is. Yeah.
That's my takeaway. That was the question I had that I didn't have an answer for in the notes, but I think that might be the only place to leave this.
But I will say, Just Like That and Sex and the City all have Michael Patrick King.
Yes, but they don't have Darren Star.
Yeah, and I guess that's part of it too. Yeah. Okay, fine. Yep. Well, that's it. We answered it. That's it.
It's a tricky thing because you're right. At the end of the day, these aren't creative decisions, at least not purely creative.
No,
these are commercial products, right? The franchises are, Batman's a thing you sell lunchboxes for, so it can never end. It can never do certain things. Yeah, it's a hard thing because we don't engage with them as commercial products.
No, we engage with them as stories and as works of art because that's what they are fundamentally.
I think we always see or hear stories within that human tradition of around a campfire. I think it goes back to oral traditions.
Yeah, Homer. Yeah.
Where we judge them on that level, even when they stop being that thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, even when there are all these other elements that impact, that's how they can be created with such, quality and degrees of excellence is because they make money so the people who make them can get paid professionally to do that and only that. So I get it, but it's when we get too far away from that essence, it really impacts the whole thing.
And it's interesting that things like MCU become a pejorative. Even you've used it as a shorthand for this sort of bloated franchise excess.
Money-making bullshit.
That starts to sour your opinion of the original. Over on Patreon, we've been doing a lot of superhero episodes. We went through all 4 Captain America movies. They were delightful. We did a bunch of Spider-Man episodes. We did some Deadpool episodes. There's a lot of good to be found there.
Of course.
But when these things continue on too long, when they start to bloat or bleed or excess or whatever, it does start to sour you. We saw how the audience turned on And Just Like That. Mm-hmm. It's incredibly tricky.
It is.
Because I can't just say, well, you end it when the creator, because they'll just replace the creator. And when we talk about franchises, we're talking about the most successful stories in popular culture. Mm-hmm. We're talking about the most resonant and well-known stories in our world. Those are the things that rise to this level of success. They don't get fucking sequels and spin-offs unless they're incredibly successful. Mm-hmm. So what we're kind of saying on a broader global cultural level is that the stories that resonate with us the most are never allowed to die. And they, to the point that we end up resenting them.
Yeah.
Or they make us bitter.
And that's so sad.
Because
makes me really sad.
You don't have to be a full-on nerd 500 episodes into a podcast to have this sort of opinion. Right. I think everyone has felt burned by some series that has once meant a lot to them.
I agree. I think it's a very common occurrence, which is because if you think about the tragedy of this is the Conjuring Last Rites. So you said it's record breaking in terms of its box office success, its commercial success. So the lesson the studio will take from that is not, this was a good ending, let's make another franchise that, does these great storytelling things and ends well. It's, let's make another Conjuring movie because it will make money. And so that is what leads to that souring. That's what always happens is this show, this movie, this entry did well, so let's make another one. And not, let's do something else with some of these same qualities. Let's do something else with James Wan. Let's do something else with, Darren Star. It's, let's make them do more of this same thing. And that's, I think, the saddest part of it.
Totally.
Yeah.
It's strange because I think that feeling that I was trying to explore at the end of the Conjuring discussion of it feeling like this weird zombie in the corner of my mind that I was now going to have to watch reanimate and Frankenstein itself across the airwaves, where I would come to distance myself from it and resent it or stop recognizing the thing I loved. It's weird that we all have to do that kind of detachment from something that means a lot to us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really sad, which is why I choose to ignore And Just Like That. And I kind of choose to ignore seasons 7 and 8 of Game of Thrones. And I choose to ignore season 2 of House of the Dragon, because that doesn't feel like the thing I love. And so I have to kind of pretend it doesn't exist.
So is this, to go back to the intro here, is this an inexorable part of fandom that you have to at some point get off the train?
I guess so, because that's just outside of our control. That's how a lot of this goes. So yeah, even when I tell people, oh, you should watch this show or watch this thing, I say, yeah, but stop after this season. I often tell people that because I don't want them to have that same soured experience that I had. Because
you hear the toxic fandom phrase. Yeah. You hear about toxicity within fandom. But I've been trying to explore that idea, I guess, in different words and different concepts. That's what we've been talking about for an hour and a half now. There is a real human emotional element here. Mm-hmm. It's a hard thing. And I do think endings are make or break.
Well,
the number of times a week, that I see something online where people say, damn, the ending of Game of Thrones was so bad that we don't even bring it up anymore, that everyone has forgotten about it and pretends it doesn't exist.
Yeah, we can't talk about it because it's too devastating. Like, I mean, humans don't like endings, right? Like, we don't like things ending, period. Humans don't like change. We don't like when things end. Like, that's a natural human, like, disposition. But so then the problem is we sort of screw ourselves over because we don't want to end the thing because that would make us sad. And so we run it into the ground and make it worse and worse and worse. And then it ends on like the worst note possible. And then we feel even worse about it. So versus like thinking like Breaking Bad is a good example, even though I know the franchise continues in spin-offs, but like the original series, my only memory of that is, wow, that show was so good. I always think I wish I could have seen more. I always think I wish Walt's story had continued on. I wish I could have followed Jesse after, but you kind of want to leave people with that. Like El Camino was an interesting experiment, but I didn't dislike it. Like, it wasn't bad, but I kind of prefer the ending where I just see Jesse leaving in the car and I don't know what happens next. I just think that's better. So I think we have to sort of go against our human knee-jerk dislike and fear of endings and just let things end.
I think to break it down to a more kind of elemental level, I think you just nailed it, because the essence of storytelling and human curiosity, the reason that we love stories, it's that 1-2 word question. It's what's next? Mm-hmm. And as long as the audience is still asking that question, you can keep telling your story.
Sure.
But
if you answer too much of it, then it's like, oh.
If they stop asking that question before you stop telling the story, there's some like mysterious invisible line in the sand where you have to stop before they stop. And
I kind of think that's why I don't like the finale of 6 Feet Under. This is not spoiling it, but like I
mean, you can spoil it.
I mean, I won't spoil.
You almost need to.
I won't spoil the characters themselves, but the show ends with a montage of you looking into the future and seeing how every character dies.
They run a funeral home. The show's all about death. Every episode, you see someone die at the beginning. It's about organizing their funeral.
Yeah, and so in the finale, you see how all of your main characters die in the future. They don't die in that episode, but you jump years in the future and see them die. And I didn't like that because it felt kind of cheap to me. I would rather end it not knowing what happens next to my characters and wondering and imagining and hoping they all have good endings and hoping they die when they're nice and old and it's peaceful and they're in bed, but knowing that that's probably not how it's going to go for everybody. But I would want that mystery and that wanting more. And I think the way that them choosing to show them all how they all die kind of ruined that for me. And I get why they did it, because like you just said, it's a show about death. I completely understand that decision, but I didn't like it.
I think for me, because I've watched that episode a number of times, that montage is so rooted in character that I don't think you have to take it as objective truth. It's about one character aging to be 100, and she's a photographer, and you see the photos of all the family around her in her hospital bedroom. Mm-hmm. So I think you can almost extrapolate, because she's driving away from home at the end of the episode. I think you can almost watch that finale as her looking forward to and forcing herself to recognize the fact that everyone in her family will one day die.
Especially because she's the youngest. And so chances are she'll outlive all of them.
So I don't know if you have to take it as objective fact. It means a lot to me just because it's such a beautiful montage and the song is so good. And it feels so earned. And a lot of the endings are poetic or flippant in a way that I think serves their individual characters. But I totally understand why you don't like it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it's interesting. I think I like what you're getting to here, because I think humans go in skeptical to any supposed endings. Mm-hmm. Because if you like the thing enough to pay the ticket price, you don't want it to end.
Right. So then you're going to be mad when it's over.
So you're on the back foot. Like, you want it to be good, and it damn well better be good. But also it kind of can't be good because I'm sad.
Yeah, right. I don't want it to end. They better have more for me after this.
We're fickle creatures.
We are. We're impossible to please, unfortunately.
So I guess it's a question without an answer.
I mean, that's why so many things have fucking epilogues, because you end it nicely, but then you also have to flash forward and make sure you know what happens in the end.
Or appendices, where we find out what happened to Sam.
Right. Or you get Pottermore.com rom-com. Like, you know, like you have to know what happens after my ending.
I remember that. It was right after Harry Potter ended. And, this was a million years ago at this point.
Yeah.
And J.K. Rowling was doing some event. And this was back in the time of like the family computer.
Yes.
So I printed out
the family computer.
People were asking her questions of like, where did Neville go to work and what happened to the snake? And I remember I printed out and I stapled together this like booklet of all of these answers.
Right.
Of what, because it felt like canon. It was like, well, this is now the ending. Now that I know what happened to these people.
Because everybody was asking her and she was like, yeah, I'm writing a Harry Potter encyclopedia. And then that's what Pottermore became, where you find out what happens to Harry and Ron and Hermione and who marries who and how many kids do they have and what are their kids' names and how do they die and what happened. Like she details everything out, which was like, as a fan, was so fun.
But it's not just fun. It feels important. As a diehard fan like we both were at the time, that felt so essential. That felt as important to the story as any of the books on my shelf. And I think subliminally, that's why I printed it out and stapled it, because it felt that level of important. But none of that information I've ever gone back to or reread, and none of it enriches those stories at all.
Well, right, because importantly, she didn't write another book.
Right.
They didn't write another movie or a TV show that like chronicles these outcomes, these plot points, these character moments. It's more just a like, it's important for me as a fan to know what happens and like know some random details, but I don't need another segment of the story. The story ends with Deathly Hallows. Again, we're not talking about the fucking prequels and spin-offs. And she said, like, I am done with Harry's story. Of course, then she goes and writes The Cursed Child. So what the fuck is wrong with you, woman? But
she didn't even write it, but yeah.
She kind of, whatever, it doesn't matter. But for the most part, Harry's story ends with Deathly Hallows, and those extra details are sprinkles and frosting and whatever the fuck other metaphor you want, but they don't add another entry, and that's, I think, the really key point.
Yeah, I guess, but I'm more interested in my compulsion to read all of that. That I still wanted more, even though it didn't enrich anything. Yeah. Because I think that's part of this almost morbid fascination that leads us to follow these zombie franchises long after they stop bringing us any joy.
Well, I think you're getting to the point, is that if they had actually written that out as a story, it wouldn't have worked because those details, you're right, don't enrich anything. So it would have just been this like weird meandering souring of your story. So I think if you flash it back to like something like The Office, I think it's interesting if we find out that Jim and Pam have more kids and move to Austin and Jim starts his business with Daryl, whatever the fuck he does. I don't remember. Like, that's interesting to know.
That's good retention. Is that true?
Yeah.
I forgot all of that.
I just remember because they moved to Austin and I'm from Austin. So that's like, oh, Austin. but watching that play out in the show, not interesting, not enriching, doesn't do anything for me. It's just interesting for me to know as a fan of what happens to Jim and Pam, but I don't need to see it all play out.
Okay, so if I'm wrapping a bow on this, again, I know I've said that 20 minutes ago, but honestly, as much as we can say these are commercial products and as long as they are successful, there will be more of them, we're kind of to blame too.
Sure.
Because we're still asking what's next.
Because we're the human beings who want to know, yeah.
So how do you end a franchise? No one has ever figured it out.
I guess you end it nicely and then give everybody a Pottermore.com of your chosen.
Seriously, like it's either because you can't divorce the money and the audience from it.
No, it's. I guess the answer is that it's impossible unless you're Julian Fellows.
It's a trick question. Yeah, and maybe that's why that ending is so. It feels so rare and exceptional.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, truly, to open this question to the audience, whether you're on the comments on YouTube or on the Patreon, or you want to email us, secondbreakfastpod@gmail.com. Back to this central question. How do you end a franchise? With all the examples it's probably more than a dozen franchises we brought up at this point. How do you do this? Is it possible? Mm-hmm. Or is there too much morbid curiosity? Is there too much money to be made for us to ever end things on that perfect note?
Yeah. Can human beings actually capably do this? Yeah.
Are there any perfect, beautiful, satisfying examples you can think of? Please let us know about that too.
Yes.
Also, that functions as a recommendation.
Exactly. Yeah. No, I would love to keep this complicated conversation going. So do, and thank you if you've stuck around for this hour and a half. Please, thank you.
More than that.
How long, Cam?
Hour 48.
Holy shit! We haven't done a 2-hour episode in eons.
Very long time.
Our longest episode recently, I think, was our MCR discussion, which was an hour and a half. But
again,
man,
the support that you give us, listening to the content, watching the content, and supporting the Patreon, has let us do things that we think are better for the show, like going back to weekly episodes, where we can explore things at this level of depth. If we were doing 2 episodes a week, we would not be doing this episode.
No, we would have to be fitting in other stuff and trying to because we don't.
It would be more about logistics than it would be about discussion.
Exactly, yeah. So thank you so much. Please, comment down below, like, subscribe, and all this stuff.
$2 a month, support the show, get access to the whole back catalog of bonus episodes.
Absolutely.
Including a lot of comparison, contrast, roundup episodes like this. The Breakfast Buffet is a lot of this, and we've done like 30 some odd volumes of that.
Those are really fun. Speaking of endings and good writing, may I recommend Cam's latest book, Lemon Tarts in Space? Please check it out. Cam is a writer, illustrator, producer, actor, amazingly talented creative. His latest book, Lemon Tarts in Space, is a light sci-fi, dark comedy. It's funny, it's sad, it's dark, it's kooky, it's crazy. It's Monty Python meets Alien meets Flubber meets Friday the 13th. It's a delightful experience, and it has a very good and satisfying ending.
I started with the ending.
Did you really?
I wanted this to be the most complete and fully plotted thing I'd ever written.
That being said, you've had some ideas for a sequel, haven't you?
Oh, I'm definitely doing it.
So there is that. But do check that out.
But that puts the pressure on, you know?
Exactly. The links to watch or to listen to or read that are in the description of this episode.
And it's totally up to you to ignore the sequel. You can listen to Lemon Tarts right now, and if you like that ending, fine, fuck the
just
sequel.
Move on forever.
Totally a la carte.
Yeah. Check it out. Thank you all so much for your support, for listening to this episode, for listening to this show, for letting us do these more conversational, philosophical,
getting back to our roots as a podcast.
Yeah, remember, all our episodes used to be this long. It was crazy back in the day. We had a lot.
We were young.
We had a lot of time back then. It was fun. We started during the pandemic. So anyway, thank you very much for listening. Let us know what you think makes a good ending. And speaking of endings, let's end this episode. We'll catch you here in just a few days with another brand new episode.